Manchmal führen Geschichten uns dorthin zurück, wo wir vergessen haben, wer wir sind. Willkommen bei Nachttanz mit Cory, einem Raum zwischen Seele, Schatten und Menschsein. Hier lese ich aus meiner Nachttanz-Saga und spreche über das, was erinnert werden will. In uns, durch uns und manchmal trotz uns. Es gibt Menschen, die sagen, sie seien gestorben und mit einer Botschaft zurückgekommen. Susanne Wilson ist eine von ihnen. Hi, ich bin Cory, die Autorin der Nachttanz-Saga und freue mich riesig, dass du wieder dabei bist. Mein Gast heute ist ein Medium, eine Autorin und Intuitionstrainerin aus den USA und sie lebt in Carefree, Arizona. Bekannt ist sie vielen als The Carefree Medium. Bereits als Kind nahm sie Auren und spirituelle Eindrücke wahr, hielt diese Fähigkeiten jedoch lange Zeit verborgen, um ein möglichst, in Anführungsstrichen, normales Leben zu führen. Stattdessen baute sie zunächst eine klassische Karriere auf. Sie hat einen Bachelor-Abschluss in Management und einen Masters in Public Affairs Policy und sie arbeitete unter anderem in der Universitätsverwaltung sowie im Bereich Human Resources eines Fortune 100 Unternehmens. Ein entscheidender Wendepunkt in ihrem Leben war dann das Jahr 2007. Während einer schweren allergischen Reaktion hatte sie eine Nahtoderfahrung, die ihr Leben grundlegend veränderte. In der Folge begann sie ihre Fähigkeiten offener und schließlich ganz offen zu leben und sich ganz ihrer Arbeit als Medium und spirituelle Lehrerin zu widmen. Heute liegt ihr Fokus schon lange nicht mehr nur auf Jenseitskontakten, sondern vor allem darauf, Menschen dabei zu unterstützen, ihre eigene intuitive und spirituelle Verbindung zu entwickeln. Und wenn du das PDF ihres Buches Soul Smart haben möchtest, das sich genau mit diesen Themen beschäftigt, dann schreibe mir gerne eine E-Mail an autorin@nachttanz.net. Und ich schicke es dir zu, denn Susanne hat es mir nämlich freundlicherweise für meine Zuhörerinnen hier zur Verfügung gestellt. Denn es ist ihr ein Anliegen, dass wir auf ein Medium wie sie nicht angewiesen sind, sondern eigene Kontakte herstellen können, wenn wir daran interessiert sind. Du kannst das Buch auch auf Amazon finden, wenn du möchtest, und ich habe es in den Shownotes verlinkt. Wenn du aber eine kostenlose, das war das Wort, was mir gerade fehlte, wenn du ein kostenloses PDF haben möchtest, dann schreibst du mir bitte an autorin@nachttanz.net und ich schicke es dir. In diesem Gespräch mit Susanne erzählt sie, wie gesagt, von ihrer Nahtoderfahrung, von dem Moment, in dem ihr Körper versagte, weil sie eine lebensbedrohliche, sie ist schwer, weil sie lebensbedrohlich war, also eine lebensbedrohliche anaphylaktische Reaktion erlebte. Und sie berichtet auch von dem, was sie eben in dem Moment, wo sie diese Nahtoderfahrung hatte, quasi im Jenseits wahrgenommen hatte. Und sie berichtet von der Botschaft, die sie zurückgebracht hat. Und diese Botschaft war: Deine eigentliche Arbeit hat noch gar nicht begonnen. Und darauf hat sie fast ein bisschen ärgerlich reagiert, erzählt sie im Interview, weil sie das Gefühl hatte, dass sie schon so viel gemacht hatte und so viel Einsatz gezeigt hatte. Und dann war das hier die Botschaft, mit der sie zurückkam ins Leben: Deine eigentliche Arbeit hat noch gar nicht begonnen. So, dieses ganze Gespräch ist mehr als nur diese Nahtoderfahrung. Wir sprechen darüber, was Mediumship eigentlich ist und auch darüber, was es nicht ist, über Missverständnisse in diesem Feld, über die Frage, wo es problematisch werden kann, über Trauer, über Abhängigkeit und darüber, warum Susanne heute sagt, macht am besten eure eigene Verbindung, also stellt eure eigenen Verbindungen her in die Spirit World, verlasst euch nicht nur auf andere. Wir gehen auch noch weiter, wir sprechen über Reinkarnation, über unterschiedliche Vorstellungen von Seele und Bewusstsein, die vielleicht sogar auch eine Auswirkung hätten auf meine Nachttanzsage, aber dazu komme ich auch nochmal in einer zukünftigen Folge. Wir sprechen außerdem über nichtmenschliche Intelligenz und ich möchte an dieser Stelle etwas ganz klar sagen. Ich habe im Internet Videos gesehen von einer Person, die ich jetzt hier wieder verlinkt noch benennen werde, die ja Gelder von James Randi bekommen hat. Und James Randi wird dir ein Begriff sein, wenn du nochmal zurückgehst zu Nachttanz, den ersten Band in Kapitel 5. Da wird kurz auch berichtet, wer er ist. So, und diese Frau, die in eben Gelder von ihm wohl mal bekommen hat, bezeichnet ihren Videos Susanne zum Beispiel als Fake. Und ich habe mir ein paar Sachen angeguckt und finde das schon fast Rufmord, empfinde das schon fast als Rufmord. Aber auch das ist etwas, auf das ich vielleicht in Zukunft noch einmal zurückkommen werde. Ich will nur sagen, ich persönlich jetzt teile diese Einschätzung, dass Susanne ein Fake wäre, überhaupt nicht, in keinster Weise. Gleichzeitig ist es natürlich wichtig, sich mit solchen Fragen auseinanderzusetzen, schon alleine, weil es ganz viele Fake-Mediums also da draußen einfach gibt, das ist so. Und deshalb denke ich eben, dass ich mich möglicherweise in einer zukünftigen Folge mit diesem Thema noch einmal genauer auseinandersetzen werde. Was mich persönlich auch sehr berührt hat in diesem Gespräch mit Susanne, ist zum Beispiel die Erfahrung, die sie als Kind gemacht hat, nämlich dieses krasse Mobbing, allein für das, was sie wahrgenommen hat. Und wenn du eben Nachttanz kennst, dann wirst du hier vielleicht eine Parallele erkennen, denn auch Sailor ist ja als Kind genau daran fast zerbrochen, aber auch daran gewachsen. Und was ich an dem ganzen Gespräch mit Susanne besonders schätze, ist, es geht nicht darum, jemanden zu überzeugen, überhaupt nicht, sondern es geht darum, Fragen zu öffnen und dabei die eigene Wahrnehmung nicht zu verlieren. Und wichtig, das Gespräch ist auf Englisch. Susanne ist Amerikanerin und spricht leider kein Deutsch. Und wenn du merkst, dass es sprachlich schwierig wird, unserem Gespräch zu folgen, dann findest du am Ende dieser Folge eine ausführliche deutsche Zusammenfassung von mir. Und dafür kannst du, ab jetzt ungefähr eine Stunde vorspulen und dann erzähle ich dir im Detail, was sie alles gesagt hat. So, und jetzt wünsche ich dir viel Spaß bei meinem Interview mit the Carefree Medium Susanne Wilson.
Yeah, Susanne Wilson, I am so grateful, so happy that you're here. Welcome to my podcast and thank you for making the time.
I'm thrilled to be here, Corey. Thanks for asking me.
I would like to start with an introduction, if you don't mind. Maybe you would like to introduce yourself a little bit. I will also include a short intro to this, to the podcast version of this video as well. But I would love for you to introduce yourself first. Would that be okay?
Absolutely. I am known as the Carefree Medium because my clients actually gave me that name.
Yeah.
I was living and working in Carefree, Arizona. Believe it or not, there is a city actually named that.
Oh, really?
And so I had a gentleman leave a voicemail message at my office number saying, my wife and I are coming in from Canada and we want to have a session with the Carefree Medium. And I'm like, that's got a nice ring to it. Because think about it, you guys. Once you fully trust that you cannot die, you can live a more carefree life here, right? And so I'm like,
Definitely,
this okay, I'm going to take that. This works. But that's not who I was most of my life. Like many of the people listening to this, you have like different lives within your life,
Mhm.
and we're always growing and changing. For me, I was a little child that had all of these abilities of clairvoyance and clairaudience, and I would see things that were very disruptive to my life, and I try to describe them to the adults and other kids around me, and it got me bullied in school. And I did not want to go to school. And I literally would get physically sick about
Mhm.
going to school, even though I made good grades. And I would also pretend to be sick to not go
Mhm, mhm.
because I was getting bullied and pushed down on the playground and stuff like that. And so my mom asked her father, a Protestant preacher,
Mhm.
to talk to me and find out what's going on with me. And
Mhm.
I'm in grade school, so I tell him I see these lights around people. I see others that the other kids don't see. And to
Mhm.
my relief and shock, he said, I see them too. And
Mhm.
so I got a really good mentor in my life as a child. He also taught me to be quiet about these abilities, that they are coming from God, that God gives everybody gifts.
Mhm.
Mine are these. And at some point in my life, I'd use them, but be careful. So I sort of went quiet in the closet, as they say, about
Mhm.
having abilities. And so through my 20s, 30s, 40s, I was getting an education, building a career. I got my bachelor's degree in management, a
Mm.
master's in public affairs policy. It's called an MPA, or
Yeah,
master's in public admin.
yeah.
And I had great jobs. I was a university administrator. I was in a corporate office in human resources
Mhm.
for a Fortune 100 company. And then in my 40s, the big wake up call happens. And I bet a lot of people listening have had wake up calls too,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
something that
Mhm.
shifts everything.
Everything, yeah, yeah.
And mine was a near-death experience with anaphylaxis. Do you know what anaphylaxis
No,
is?
I don't actually, no.
Okay. Well, I don't get to talk about it much anymore because the people that are really familiar with me, especially in the States,
Yeah.
have heard it so many times. The
Okay.
podcasters will go, "Yeah, you skipped the part about the
Skip the
ND.
part,
We all
okay.
know that. We
No,
all
no,
know that."
you're
So
more
it's like,
than welcome to share
oh,
with us.
great.
Yes.
Well, it's a treat because it is such a pivotal point in many people's lives
Okay.
when they have the NDE or near death
Mhm.
experience. And
Mhm.
please know that you don't have to be in the operating room on the table with gadgets hooked up to you to have a near death experience. It can come in many different ways, in many different forms.
Mhm.
Mine was getting allergy tested at
Oh.
the doctor's office, and I was back for the second round of allergy tests, and they prick little spots in your arm, and
Yeah.
they add the things that you might be allergic to.
Mhm.
I think they're called allergens,
Mhm.
and they see how you react. My reaction became anaphylaxis, full on, 1 in a million anaphylaxis, where, I ultimately stopped breathing. My throat was
Mhm.
closing up. It was honking like a goose. I
Mhm.
was saying, "I
Mhm.
can't breathe." And the next thing I knew, I had these technicians holding me up, one on either side of me. I had 2 doctors that ran in the room,
Oh,
and they were going to rescue me, of
yeah.
course. I mean, if you're gonna have a life-threatening allergic reaction, the doctor's office, it's a good place to
It's a
have it.
good
I'm
place to
just
be.
right, yeah. And so here I am, and,
Mm.
I felt the moment that my breath stopped. I felt the moment that my heart went beep, beep, beep.
Mhm.
I felt the beats stop,
Stop.
and I popped back and out of my body and was a little bit above it, like
Yeah.
looking down at the back of my head.
Mhm.
And I could see in the room the 2 technicians and the 2 doctors slowed down. To
Mhm.
me, they looked like they were in slow motion.
Mhm. Mhm.
And one doctor was preparing an injection very slowly. The other was on the phone, and I would find out calling 911.
Mhm.
And while I'm out of the body, I see beautiful colors. I hear
Mhm.
beautiful music. I want to get to that music. I want to go to where the music's coming from.
Yeah.
And I feel arms around me, like somebody's standing behind me with arms around me as I'm looking at this scene. I don't want to be back to the body. The scene that my physical body is in
Mm-hmm.
is flat, one-dimensional looking to me, like it's a picture.
Okay.
The human beings they're trying to help me, all 4 medical professionals, looked unreal, like cardboard cutouts.
Mm-hmm.
Their eyes were dead. They looked like nothing to me, like this is not the reality. Where I am is the reality, right? And it's a weird feeling because I immediately accepted it.
Okay.
No question, right? And I'm not doing any kind of spiritual work at the time. I'm not, that's not my thing. I've put all that into a secret hiding place. I go to development circles secretly. I don't tell anybody. I'm actually kind of ashamed because I don't want to be thought of as crazy.
Yeah.
I want to make money,
Yeah.
I want to have a good
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
But I immediately
Yeah.
accept, Corey, where I am, and I want to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realize I can't see him, but the arms around me are Granddad. And he had died when I was a teenager.
Oh.
And so I'm like, wow, not only am I going someplace with this beautiful music and these beautiful swirling colors, I've got my best friend of my entire life, my father figure, my everything.
Wow.
I'm going with him.
Yeah. Oh, that's
I mean, how good can it be, right? Just as I feel like I'm going to go someplace, I heard this very strange voice I've never heard before saying, your work has not started yet.
Oh.
And they put the injections in me, and then they've laid me down, and they have that machine out, the defibrillator.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so they have that. The ambulance is there. The paramedics are there. And I get back in the body, and I hear them say, wait, no, she's breathing. So I didn't get the shock to the heart, but it was a shock to come back in. But
Yeah.
after that, I had to really question what work hasn't started yet, because I was working a full-time job,
Yeah.
a professional job, and I was going to weekend school for a PhD in human capital, human resources development.
Resources. Okay.
Yeah.
So, wow. Did you bring back any messages from that near-death encounter, or was it just um, a feeling that something needed to change, or was there anything else? You also mentioned your granddad. So was that the
Yeah.
first time where you thought you now had kind of proof of an afterlife, or was that before as well? So were there messages? Was that proof for you in the moment that there is an afterlife?
Great
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
I already knew, but I don't think I completely trusted
Okay.
until then. I was going even before the NDE, I was going to psychic development workshops. I was sitting in a development circle, but I had everybody pretty much sworn to secrecy. Like, if this ever gets out, my career is cooked.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to get out, and I wasn't even sure why I was doing it. I can remember trying to get the winning lottery numbers.
Okay.
I wasn't coming from a real spiritual place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the message was to me, was get your act together, get your priorities together. If you're going to use this gift the way your grandfather told you were going to use it when you were a child, you got to change. And the first reaction that I had to that was when I was in the hospital bed, because of course they're going to take you to the hospital. I did see my grandfather in the ambulance, and then I didn't see him again for a long time. But in the hospital, then it dawned on me, they said something to me as right when I came back, and I had to remember what they said. And then when I realized it was, your work hasn't started yet, I was angry, because I thought, I'm working the hardest I've ever worked in my life with school and a job.
Yeah.
And then I also felt like why did they not keep me? Why did they think I haven't been enough or done enough? Like I felt maybe I was punished to come back. And so, and all my abilities were turned up all the way.
Okay. Can you describe your abilities a bit more? Because I was going to ask you
Gosh,
about your mediumship in general,
yeah,
mediumship
yeah,
ability. Can you describe what you can do? I mean, it's a lot, basically, right?
yes,
Can you give
yeah.
some
I
examples?
I had to go back to classes and say, look, I don't need to learn how to tune in
Okay.
anymore. I need to learn how to tune out
Okay.
because now I'm wide open, and I learned that each of us has personal sovereignty,
Mhm.
free will,
Mhm.
and agency
Okay.
to tap in or tune out. And I've got to tell you, that is so liberating to know that you don't have to receive information if you don't want to, but you can. And so I learned to be helpful, hopeful, and healing.
Mhm.
Meaning, if I tune in, and Edgar Casey once said, whenever you tune into the Akashic records, or meaning
Yeah.
information in the ether, you
Yeah.
must do it with the mindset of being helpful, hopeful, and healing.
Okay.
So I decided I'm going to revisit all these studies that I have. Instead of trying to use them to my benefit, use
Mhm.
them to benefit everyone around me if
Mhm.
I can,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so what I have is I pretty much every one of the clairs, if people have read about the clairs or
Yeah.
clears,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, clairaudience is clear
Yeah.
hearing,
Yeah.
clairvoyance, claircognizance,
Mhm.
clairsentience. So it's all hearing,
Wow.
feeling, knowing.
Yeah.
I'd say my strongest ones my whole life have been clairvoyance and clairaudience. It's the seeing and the hearing. But there's a very important distinction I want to make for people.
Mhm.
Sometimes they think they don't see anything. They're not clairvoyant at all. Well, I'm not seeing objectively like I
Mhm.
did when I was a child. I'm seeing subjectively, and that's in the mind's eye, like a
Mhm.
flash of a daydream, like a little glimmer. And
Mhm.
so a lot of us can see subjectively. You don't want to see objectively. After the NDE, I was set back in time to where it was when I was a child, where the aura was in the room. The other person's grandfather that passed was in the room. You
Mhm.
know, you want your clairvoyance to be subjective in the
Okay.
mind's eye because
Okay.
it will disrupt your life to no end. So I
Mhm.
used alcohol for a
Mhm.
while. I abused alcohol
Okay.
to tune it out.
Yeah.
And Corey, people will tell me, wait, wait, wait. I drink and I have a couple of drinks and I can really tune in, and I start reading everybody in the room.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's a misuse of the gift. And that's also leaving yourself open to be massively depleted. You're
Okay.
using alcohol to lower your inhibitions.
Yeah.
I used it for a time after the NDE to keep that all away.
Mhm.
So, I don't recommend alcohol as a way to tune in. I don't recommend it as a way to tune out, but I needed something for a while to figure out why are all these gifts full on? And
Yeah.
it didn't take long. It took about a year for me to realize I've just got to leave the corporate and the academe. I've got to leave this life. I got to do something different. And that changed everything.
But a year is still quite a long time, I think. So
It
wasn't
is.
that a difficult transition? It must have been a difficult
Yeah.
transition. So, when you decided to change careers, so to speak, how did you start with that? Did you just, I don't know, did you hand in your notice, and say, so I
I
stopped
was
work?
gonna get fired. I was gonna
You
get
were gonna
fired
get fired?
anyway.
Yes.
I I
Okay.
I I was letting it happen. I
Okay.
just didn't care about the job anymore,
Okay.
and
Okay.
my performance was going down. Like,
Okay.
I just couldn't get into it. I wanted
Mhm.
to love,
Mhm.
and I was so wide open. I mean, I used to tell a story. There was a woman I worked with and her mom, was going through stage 4 cancer, and I remember, she was a corporate, like an executive vice
Mhm.
president, and I walked into a boardroom for a meeting, And I just went up to her and I said, "Oh, how's your mom? Give me a hug." You just don't do that in that corporate setting. And I remember people thinking, well, what's wrong with her? Is she on drugs and that sort of thing? And I mean, we're teaching, don't touch anybody in the workplace and sensitivity training, all of that. And I was like, I was like this open heart, so sensitive. And I just stopped doing my job, basically. I started being like, like the counselor character on Star Trek, New
Yes,
Generation.
I know her. Yes. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not the job. But I did have an executive in the company take me aside and have me use my abilities to help with strategic planning and things like that.
Really?
And we were meeting one time and he said, you're not long for this job, right? You've been redirected. And I'm like, yeah, but I want to stay just long enough to cash out my stock and go. And I did.
Okay, amazing. And then you started off as the Carefree Medium immediately, or was there another transition period between?
No, I actually worked in a call center for a while. We cashed out of Florida. We sold everything. I had a huge home, boats, cars, the whole thing. But that's not sustainable without that job, without that career. And I took a really menial job for a couple of years while I was building a practice. And I enjoyed the people that I worked with, but I moved from Florida to Arizona to Carefree and started all over. I was able to buy an office condo to meet with people in person.
Okay.
And I was able to it was like I was put in situations so fast where I never really had to market or build a business.
Okay,
It
that's
just
cool.
happened.
Was just meant to be, really, right?
Yeah. And so people will say to me, Suzanne, I want to do what you did. I want to turn away from all of this. And I just can't because I have so many obligations. What do I do? And so what I tell them is, I know how fortunate I am. I'm grateful every day. I know how blessed I am. Do I miss that money? Oh, yeah, sure. Sometimes. The people say money doesn't buy happiness, but money certainly makes it easier for you to be carefree.
Yes,
It definitely does.
Yeah.
That is for sure. But I also tell them, you know what? The source, God, will use you in place wherever you are right now. So if you're thinking you want to be of service to others, look right where you are now. My granny used to sing this song, and I think it came from Ireland. I don't know, but that's where her parents came from, and it was brighten the corner where you are.
Where you are. Yeah, that's good advice. That is
Right?
good advice,
You
definitely.
can. You
Yeah,
can. And you can find ways to plug in
Mhm.
your pursuits that you want to do. We can't all up and quit our jobs and do the spiritual work. And there were sacrifices that come with this. There were friends that I had to lose because they could not get behind the new me. And it is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah. I was wondering, when you started to become a medium full-time, so to speak, what would you say is maybe a main misunderstanding of your work or of being a mediumship? A medium, not a mediumship, of doing mediumship. What is the main misunderstanding?
Yes. Okay. Another great question. That we can just tune into whoever we want. Like I could order up your aunt and uncle, like I'm ordering a burger with fries.
Okay.
And that they can tell me, here's my address, here's my name, here's the year I was born. I mean, it's
Doesn't work
not
like
going to
that.
happen. I heard John Edward say recently, how do you talk with someone who's deaf and uses sign language? Well, they're giving you signs, right? Because they're not speaking, they're not hearing.
Yes.
It's signs, and you need to understand that language to be able to communicate well and concisely. And it's the same thing that it's symbology, it's signs, it's reaching into my mind and pulling out an experience I've had to get me to say something similar to you. And I think it's important to understand that it's not a guessing game, and that you use your discernment to know the difference between someone who thinks that they have a gift and someone who actually does. I think most people who aren't very good at this really want to do a good job. They really want to tune in, but maybe they just got lucky a couple of times, and it's not a consistent gift for them over and over and over. So that's the biggest misconception. Remember, I mentioned the lottery numbers.
Yeah,
When,
exactly. Yeah, I was
right?
thinking about them. That's a myth as well, right?
Yeah, but I'm
Lottery.
going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you something, Corey. I don't know if I've told anybody this before, but
Yeah.
for several years in a row around Christmas time, there was a grocery store that I would go in and buy a lottery ticket. And, we'd do a scratch off of a lottery ticket on Christmas Day. And one Christmas, as I stood there in front of the case, it's a glass case and you can see all the different tickets, and there's many to choose from.
Yeah.
One of them, a stack of one of the tickets lit up in front of me when I said, "Look, just give me this one. Just give me this one." And it goes beep, 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 and it's lighting up, lighting up. So I said, I want that one. And I won $50 cash.
Wow.
And, but see, did they make me rich? I think not.
Not really, no.
Is it something that's in my future to be rich? Obviously not, because that would have been the time. So things like that can happen. I had a distant relative one time text me and say, "Look, I just want to know if I'm going to get pregnant. We're doing IVF. Please just tell me. I've never asked you for anything before." And I got so ticked off. I was like, she's really bugging me, and it's constant. So finally, I was in a bad mood, and I went, "Yes, you're going to get pregnant in the fall, and it's one boy and one girl, twins." And then after I did it, I thought, well, that'll show her. Guess what? Guess what? Boy and a girl. Twin. Yeah. And I'm like, it was a throwaway comment, and it was right. So and so imagine when you actually do tune in and you ask for information coming in. Now you've got to translate all these symbols and signs, not mess it up. And so, it's practice, it's dedication, it takes a ton of energy. I don't do one-to-one mediumship anymore. I haven't for some time. But if there's a bereaved parent out there who's never, ever had a reading because they can't afford it, I will do the reading for them at no charge. And sometimes it takes me a while to get to them, because I feel like if they've never been able to afford it and it's something that they really want, that it, to me, is a great exchange of energy. Is to try to connect with that child and give them something there's no way I could know, so that they can have some peace. But what I don't want to do, and the trap that we can get in when we get well known, or we've been a research medium like I have for the University of Arizona, get this reputation of accuracy, and then you get these people who are like addicted to readings. And so it's so frustrating at the end of a session to hear, well, this is my 10th reading and you got this, but you didn't get that. And this other guy got that, but he didn't get what you got. And I'm like, you're scorekeeping? This is not what this is for. I can only help so many people, and I don't want to help somebody that doesn't need it. So, putting parameters around the work is really important too. And that's why from day one, Corey, my whole goal has been to teach people, make your own connection so you don't have to go get any readings ever. And I think that's the thing to do.
Yeah, that's great, because you already answered another question of mine. I was going to ask about dependency, like when people come to you in grief, for example, and where do you see the line between helping them and potentially creating dependence? But you already answered this. So,
yeah. And I would say a long time ago, I would say you can only come once a year. And then I made it once every 2 years. And then I went never again, and but then I had small group readings where some people would come often, like, oh, you've come 3 times in a year. And so I took a couple of them aside and asked them, why are you doing this? And they said, I like to see how it works. I know my loved ones are okay. I don't need any new messages from them. I'm there to watch you work. And I'm like, then it's time for you to practice doing it yourself.
Yourself. Okay. Yeah. Good
Yeah.
point. Good point.
Yeah.
So, what would you say? I mean, you mentioned a few points already, but if you had to name like the golden nuggets of your mediumship, like the stuff that was um, undeniably true, that maybe, I don't know, didn't even convince your sitter totally, but maybe even surprised yourself. Can you come up with a few examples?
Yeah, there's one. There was a gentleman who came to my office years ago
Mm-hmm.
that he had been in foster care,
Mm-hmm.
and he had tried to get his records, and he couldn't get them. And there was one couple that changed his life, and he loved them.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "There's no way you could know, but can you tell me, are they on the other side?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they're here." And I got their exact names.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Wait a second." I got chills saying this now,
Yeah.
because everything else I was giving, he was just like, "Okay, that's weird. Okay, that's weird. Okay, that's weird." But when, I said, "She's here. This is her name. This is what she looked like. And she's saying hello. He's here. This is his name." And
Right.
he was like, those are records nobody has access to. And I said, "And have you ever put them on social media?" And he says, "No, I don't have social media." And so that helped him in a way that he got to say how much those foster parents changed his life. He was invisible to all the other foster parents he'd had. He was invisible in an orphanage. But there was a couple that changed his life and gave him love and made it possible for him to have a family and give them love. And he wanted the opportunity to let them know how thankful he was, and he got it. And so when something like that happens, you realize, this is why I'm here. It's not to be famous. It's not to be on TV shows. It is to make that big of a difference in somebody's life.
Yeah.
And then there's really fun stuff that you just can't guess. Like there was one, it was online, and there were bereaved parents. And I'm giving all of this information so we know that we have their son. And I said, "He's showing me something really weird now. He's nailing a door shut. He's showing me the door shut, and he's nailing it so it can't be opened." And there's mom and dad there and on the screen laughing and going, "Yeah, that was a practical joke that nobody could know." And I'm like, and it's real unusual, that sort of thing. And then if I just give one more little thing it's really cute. There was a woman whose mother is coming in, and I said, she's showing me McDonald's, and the McDonald's symbol, the golden arches, the Big Mac, and she's saying, "We're laughing now, but we weren't laughing then." And and at the end of the reading, I said, "What did that mean? Because it seemed to really impact you." And her daughter said, "My mom died eating a McDonald's Big Mac."
Wow. Oh, gosh.
And she said, "We kept that information away from everybody. It's the inside family joke." And I'm like, yeah, now don't get me wrong. You're going to get things that can be looked up because we live in a digital age. But especially in a longer reading, you have more time. You really get in. You're like, you can start to really blend with the soul and get these wild things. And sometimes it happens in a short reading too. But there are folks out there who are skeptics, and I love them because I want to see evidence too. And there are folks out there that are cynics. And and they'll say, "Look, I wouldn't believe in the existence of the afterlife if you could prove it to me."
Yeah, exactly.
And that's okay. Leave them alone. I don't try. I am not here to convince anyone of anything. I tell the people that read my book or take classes, don't try to convince anyone of anything. It is not your job, because you don't understand or know the path that an individual is on in
true.
life. That's not what the work is. The work is just to prove that to those who are open and seeking it, that we never die. Only the body dies. It's to prove survival of consciousness to those who seek that proof. For those who are not seeking it, I just feel like it's probably not on their life path, or maybe they at some point will have their own wake-up call, like
Possible.
millions of people do, and then they'll start to go out and investigate. But mediums, we're super sensitive, Corey. You know I'm super sensitive.
Oh,
You know it's like
Mhm.
this, and easily hurt.
Mhm.
And so I can't even look at what the cynics
Okay. Oh, the
say. 'Cause
cynics say, yeah. Okay.
They
Mhm.
insult everybody
Mhm.
because it's almost like they don't want you to be happy. They
Mhm.
don't want you to have your evidence. And so fortunately, they're a tiny, tiny little group in the world, and they can go feed off of each other and stay over there. And then the open-minded skeptics,
Mhm.
bring it
That's
on.
fine. Yeah, bring it on. Okay. So I was gonna mention critics, so you almost answered my question here as well. This is funny, really, because I was gonna ask as well, because some of them also say, you mentioned looking people up on the internet. That's
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
criticism that comes up quite often. And also some say, oh, this is all cold reading. Of
Yes,
thoughts, what you
yes.
do. So what do you say to that? Is it cold reading? No, but how can you respond to that?
I don't know exactly what cold reading is, or I didn't know what cold reading was, and I looked it up, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time catching it, but what it sounds like, it's a feedback loop.
Yeah,
Like,
and what
you're giving the information to
yeah,
someone, and then they're saying it back to you the same way or slightly different or whatever, and
yeah,
so
that's
I
yeah.
always say, make your own recording or take your own
Mhm,
notes, and
mm,
so that you know what you
mhm,
said or what you didn't say.
mhm,
And also look for those people who you don't have to say anything.
mhm,
You
mhm,
know, when I was doing one-to-one mediumship, I divided the readings into two different things. One is mediumship, and you have to shut up
mhm.
and you can't say much. You can
Yeah,
say
okay.
yes or no, or I get it. And then at the
Yeah,
very end, if you want to share something, great. And
yeah.
the other was the psychic, ask the guides, be
Mhm,
chatty, talk about possibilities
mhm,
and probabilities. And
mhm,
it's, if you split those out, it gets really clean that
mhm.
way. So that's my recommendation, is to look
Okay,
for those kinds of readings. You shouldn't have to say much, but you should be careful what you say.
okay. And you don't even look at people sometimes, right? When you do the
I
online meet
never look.
just
No, we turn
because
off your camera.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we turn off your camera because, number 1, we save the bandwidth for the connection. I don't want that connection to
Yeah,
drop. Number
yeah.
2, I don't wanna be confused.
Mhm,
Like, I had this person one time, I remember, I'm standing on a stage,
mhm.
and the guy's up front, and, I'm saying things, and I'm looking for feedback, and he's just frowning the whole time.
Okay.
And then at the end, he comes up to me afterwards and says, "Frown still. That was the best message I've ever had." And I'm like, "I thought I was screwing up." So I don't wanna see your face.
Yeah.
People who came to my office, I would never look up at them.
Mhm,
Zoom is nice because I can turn off their camera,
mhm. Yeah, yeah,
and
of
I always
course.
do, as you know.
That
Don't read they're
frowning
not
person.
reading You're not reading body language if you can't
Yeah,
see them.
yeah, yeah, okay. I would just I don't know, it's so funny, the person who was frowning all the
Yeah, that's his
time,
face. That's
praising
his
you.
face. Resting frown face, and here I think I'm doing a bad job, so,
Yeah,
that was a good learning lesson for me,
okay.
is don't worry about the
Mhm,
reactions, because
mhm,
people are they're stunned.
mhm.
Sometimes they get this sort of deer in the headlights thing, and I've watched other people do platform demonstrations and work, and I've seen people forget their own father's name
Yeah.
and things like that. And so it's like, yeah, just so those budding mediums out there, first, I hope you're teaching
Mhm.
others how to make their own direct connection. I hope that's part of your work, because you're going to be a great teacher because you know how to do it. But I also hope you're not looking at your sitters, because they can mess you up more
Well,
than help you.
yeah. Have you ever done, platform readings yourself?
Yeah, and we had the Afterlife Research and Education Institute conference
Yeah,
every year,
yeah.
and then it died off,
Okay.
as you know, during COVID, and so I did
Mhm,
platform there. I've done platform a couple of other places,
mhm.
and, I really like it because there's so much to work with when you walk
Mhm,
out. There's so many souls lined up. And I've done my own platform demonstrations too on my own. And I love that feeling because you're loved, guided, and supported by so many souls. And then I can see them walking around in the audience. I could see sort of like a transparent person or an outline of someone bending down and kissing their loved one in the audience.
Right.
Sometimes, I'll have somebody run up in spirit and wave and get my attention. And they're showing me, they're telling me that their loved one sitting over there said, "Go scream in Suzanne's face, get her attention." And I'm like, "Did you tell them that?" And they're like, "Yeah."
I love
I
it.
know. I mean,
Oh.
it's good stuff. It's really good
Okay,
stuff.
okay. So that brings me to another topic like of interpretation and projection and vulnerable sitters and all the rest of it. So I was
Yeah.
wondering, because you said early on you have your kind of own sign system, right? That you interpret
Yeah.
during reading. So where or how do you know that? I don't know. Or how do you differentiate between a genuine connection and the risk of projection or interpretation? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
it's a very, very delicate
yeah, I
balance.
think so. Yeah. Okay.
The key to really good evidential mediumship as a medium is to be descriptive, not interpretive.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So let me think of an example. Easy example. A red apple to
Mm-hmm.
me typically means that either that spirit communicator was a teacher
Mm-hmm.
or my sitter is a teacher. Red
Okay.
apple has come to mean teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember a couple times that symbolism failed me.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot, but it's memorable when it doesn't work.
Okay.
So here's being interpretive is saying, I believe your loved one is saying either they were a teacher or you're a teacher.
Yeah.
Yet
Yeah.
no.
Mm-hmm.
Being descriptive is saying they're holding a red apple in their hand
Mm-hmm.
and showing it to me. And the red apple typically to me means they're a teacher or you're a teacher.
Okay.
And they'll say, "Well, we're not teachers, but there is a meaning." And I'll say, "Okay, let me stop you right there.
Mm-hmm.
Don't say it."
Mm-hmm.
And I go back and in my mind, I ask, "What do you mean by the red apple?" I remember one time they had a huge apple tree in their yard. And one happy memory was gathering the apples and making apple pies and apple this and apple cakes and the thing for the whole family. I don't remember what the other one was. It was something else. But so that's just a way to show you the difference between interpreting and describing.
Okay, makes sense. And especially when you bring through afterlife contacts, I suppose you have a lot of sitters who are very vulnerable in a way. So how do you
Yes.
deal with them? How do you deal with that vulnerability?
Well, one thing that mediums typically are not,
Mm-hmm.
we are not counselors.
Yeah, okay.
Typically, there are some out there who are therapists,
Mm-hmm.
who are grief educators, and I like that package.
Mm-hmm.
I like that package of skills and knowledge and training. And they do offer like a post mortem, no
Yeah.
pun intended,
Yeah, okay.
of the session. Like now we have an extra 15 minutes, and do you want to discuss anything or whatever? I am very concerned about number one, doing no harm. First off. And so one of the things you can do on the front end is don't bring anyone who's in heavy grief into your practice.
Okay.
Don't bring them in heavy grief. They need to process. They need time. After a loved one has passed, the loved one may or may not need time to get ready to make a connection. They also, if there's any mention of being under the care of a mental health professional, I I want them to complete whatever that is first.
Yeah.
If they come in saying, I have to get a reading from Suzanne, or I don't know what I'll do, red flag, that sort of thing, because the reading is not going to fix anything. So it's very important that people hearing this to know that the reading is not going to fix you. It is a spoke in a wheel of many modalities that can help you process your grief, but the grief will still be there. And so I love organizations like Helping Parents Heal.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate to be utilized by Spirit to help get that organization off the ground in a small way. I introduced the two co-founders to each other. It was information that came through me from a young man named Morgan Boisson, who died at the foot of Mount Everest, who came through to me in a very odd way through a third party, and the message was relayed to his mother. His mother got her proof that love truly does live forever, and she started a grief organization. I helped that group find their first free meeting place for a couple of years in Cave Creek, Arizona, and I got to volunteer with them for a long time and still do. And I'm on their advisory board now. Now, I do not have access to any of their membership information. I don't have access to their Facebook group, their social media. We don't see who's coming to their meetings. We don't have email addresses, names, or phone numbers, or anything. They have a list of mediums that they've certified that they refer their bereaved parents to. And they have caring listeners. So if you go and get a reading, or if you're having a bad day, you want to do some processing, they have specially trained caring listeners that will talk to the bereaved parent at any time. They're the model of the new way to help people walk through the journey of grief. And so I love seeing organizations like this that have taken it upon themselves to codify their openness and their acceptance.
But
You
this
know?
organization is only for parents who have lost their children, right?
Yes. And so what I would like to see is somebody take their model.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a group for spouses,
Yeah.
or there's
Parents that you lost or
Yes.
something. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
we have that model out there, and there's many kinds of grief healing type of groups. And again, I'm not a counselor. I don't present myself in that way at all. But I also, we talked about getting addicted to readings. It's like crack. It really is. It's some people, and there's a moving target with some people about belief. And this doesn't apply to any particular person, whether you've lost your cat, your dad, your spouse, your daughter, whoever it is. There are people that say, I'll believe in the afterlife when somebody says to me, X. When they give X as the message, whether it's my friend who's psychic or getting a reading or whatever, I'm only going to believe when I hear them say, my loved one says X. They get it. Someone says, I've got to give you a message, or they're getting a reading. X is said. It's out there. They're thrilled. Top of the world. I'm healed for like 3 or 4 days. And then it's done. And then it's, I just don't know. I don't trust it. I will believe in the afterlife 100% when I hear why. When a psychic friend says this, or a reading says that.
Too. Yes.
The moving target's a trap, folks. It's a trap. It will drain your bank account, and it will outsource your spirituality. To keep moving that target. Don't outsource your spirituality to others. You have it within you. You can learn how to invite a dream visit. You can learn how to meet in meditation. What I wanted to offer your listeners is a free PDF of my book. They don't even have to buy the book. And
so smart, right? That's the one.
Yes. Soul Smart. What the dead teach us about spirit communication. It's an ABC 1, 2, 3 how to make your own connection. You hopefully might never need a reading again if you actually do the work. If you actually do the work.
That is so lovely. Thank you so much.
I have it on there's an email link on my website too, but we can do this however you want. But so we've given away over 500 copies of the book.
Wow.
And the feedback that I've gotten since 2000, there was a first edition, there's second edition in 2018, is
Mhm.
this stuff works. It
Yeah.
doesn't always work the way you think. Like
Yeah.
you might do the rehearsing for the dream visit a lot, and then all of a sudden you get a bunch of signs instead.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
what this does is if you do these activities to make your own connection, it's signaling the universe, I'm shining my light more brightly now, let's connect. So it's like you gotta practice. You gotta get in there and do the work. And
Yeah.
again, don't outsource your spirituality to other people all the time.
Love it. I love it. Yeah, I have to think about it, how we can do this best. So I will contact you again. I have to give it some thought, but perfect.
Okay.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Well, there's a study with me page
Mhm.
at carefreemedium.com, and there's a little paragraph there if you want a free copy of the book, click
Okay.
here.
Yeah,
So
okay.
it's there.
Also
It's there for the public all the time.
put that in the show notes as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I was going to ask another thing that has been on my mind quite a bit, and this is reincarnation. And I think that I heard you on a podcast at some point, but I don't know who you were talking to. And I have in mind that your version or his version of reincarnation differed somehow from what is commonly out there. So, how do you see reincarnation? How does it work for you? It's real, obviously, for you as well, right? But
Yes.
it works, I think, from your perspective, slightly differently than what many other people think it works. Am I
Yeah,
right?
I think that was the interview with, Craig Hogan.
Kogan, yeah, that's
Yes,
yeah,
yes, 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 from Seek Reality. I've known
yeah.
Craig for, it's actually going on 20 years because
Mhm,
I was following his work before I actually met him, and he founded the Afterlife Research and Education Institute, and I was a board member for years, and we differ a little bit too. So
mhm.
I'll start with his, which
Okay,
is
yeah.
much more, extreme on a
Okay.
sort of like a continuum, and then mine, and then what, the zeitgeist is right now.
Okay, okay.
And so for Craig, he makes the point, which is fascinating, that a loving source
Mhm,
would not punish us by
mhm,
making us come back again and again and again to get it
mhm,
right.
mhm,
That doesn't fit with what we know
mhm.
about our source energy, the one, the monotheistic God.
Yeah.
And that when we are, before we incarnate, when we are still in our spirit form,
Mm,
we get to view all these different potentials and we get to see all of these different experiences so
mhm,
that we can learn and we can have a framework and come in with some spiritual knowledge that is deep within our subconscious, or perhaps it's our unconscious. Craig, don't get mad at me if I'm getting this wrong. And I know that I'm being reductive. He's going to say I'm being reductive, but I hope I'm on the
okay.
right track. But
Yeah.
anyway, um, and so when we have a past life regression hypnosis here, we think we're remembering,
Mhm,
but it was something we reviewed before we came that would relate to our lives now.
mhm,
Right? It's some
mhm,
potential we saw or someone else's life that we saw. And he says that, and here's the part where I have to agree. I
mhm.
don't feel, it just doesn't, and I'm open to changing, but
Yeah.
right now, I don't feel that we come multiple times into multiple women's wombs.
Mhm,
We emerge through multiple birth canals
mhm.
and we grow up in multiple lives. It doesn't track for me. What
Okay,
tracks for me is that we have different emanations of one soul. And
okay.
so that's more, I don't use the term, but people will say, "Oh, I've heard that before. Or she's not coming up with this." I'm not purporting to, but
Mhm.
it aligns more with the oversoul
Okay,
theory,
okay.
and that we have different emanations of ourselves. And then the
Mhm,
zeitgeist is you do come into different wombs, you do come through different birth
mhm,
canals, you do live the entire life.
mhm,
And to me, it's very confusing to people because one of my frequently asked questions I get is, what if I get to the other side and everybody I love is gone because they reincarnated?
mhm.
Well, It never has happened. It's
Mhm.
I've never heard any of my colleagues or anyone say, "Bob can't connect right now. He's reincarnated as a young girl in China, but he'll get back to you. Leave a message at the tone." I mean, I'm making light of it, but I'm serious too. So somewhere in the middle of this, we are learning about ourselves through soul's experiences.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so for me, I'm a trained past life regressionist. I went to a college, a regionally accredited college, on
Mhm.
top of all my other degrees and certifications for several months and got certified as a
Mhm.
hypnotherapist so I could do past life regressions. For me, I ask, is it helpful, hopeful, and healing? If the answer to that is yes, I love the modality,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
I think it's helpful. But did they actually go through a birth canal and live all 78 years or 85 years or 95 years of that life? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
totally know because
Mhm.
none of us do. It's sort
Mhm.
of like a spiritual hearsay, a theory. But I
Mhm.
think that our souls have emanations in different dimensions. And so also when you look at space-time theories,
Yeah.
all of those lives or all of those lives that we're tapping into could be happening in the now, but
Mhm.
because we're in third dimensional Earth, we perceive it as linear.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, it's like make up your own mind, ask your own questions,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
leave room for new information.
Mhm. Isn't it also possible? I think Dr. Michael Newton said it at some point, if I don't mix it up right now, where he kind of claimed that a part of the soul, so to speak, stays in quote unquote heaven. Like, so when you make
Yes.
contact to a person, or
Yes.
when a person says, so I can't talk to XYZ because she has reincarnated in China, it doesn't happen. But probably maybe it doesn't happen because a rest of the soul or residue of the soul, or maybe even the majority of the soul, is still in a different place than here in our 3D world. Isn't that also a possibility, maybe?
I'll tell you what I know to be possible, and I
Yeah.
trust this.
Mhm.
We're not all here. You're not all your entire consciousness is not in
Not
your
here,
body.
yeah. Yeah,
We're
yeah.
not all here, and that's a good thing. We
Mhm.
usually will say, he's not all there,"
Mhm.
as a saying of like,
Mhm.
something's missing there, there must the screws loose, but
Mhm.
really, we're not all here because it doesn't require our entire consciousness to
Mhm.
operate these lives in 3D Earth. There's always a part of us that's connected with spirit, and that's
Yeah,
what we refer to as the soul self, the higher self.
yeah.
And
Okay.
so that I know to be true, and I think some of us are more here than others. Some of us have
Okay.
really self-actualized,
Okay.
have more of our souls present, and
Mhm.
have you ever seen somebody who's very calm and serene, and they're older, they're, like, in their
Mhm.
80s or 90s, but they look young or feel young to you, and there's, like, a light that comes through their eyes, and they're just there's a beauty there, even though the skin can be leathery and old, you
Mhm.
feel a young soul.
Mhm.
When you run across a person like that, I feel like they've got more of their soul present with them, and their aura, because I can tune into the aura too, is just like bigger and
Mhm.
bolder and
Mhm.
brighter and
Mhm.
encompasses everyone around them. They walk into a room and people feel good. And it
Mhm.
can be a very young person too
Mhm.
that comes around with this energy.
Okay.
Trouble starts when we grow older as, like, teens, and we get distracted, 20s, 30s, and 40s, and we're trying to make this world work for us.
Yeah, okay. Wow, yeah, well, so if we don't have different mothers, different wombs, different, so you think that it's all kind of in parallel lives, so it's like an oversoul, did I get this right? And we are split up in different dimensions, but don't really reincarnate through different, I don't know, mothers, different wombs, etc. That's how you think of it. Did I get this correctly?
Yes, except for one thing, I feel like that we are connected because there's to those other lives because there's some knowledge. There's
Okay.
some knowledge there that's for us that we integrate, some
Yeah.
experience that we bring in.
Okay.
And I like I say, I'm open to new information.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we're really going in different wombs all the time, if we're really forced to come back and get
Mhm.
something right,
Mhm.
it would surprise me but I'm open to it. And this is where Craig Hogan's theory that a loving God would not punish us, that would be, it would be hateful to say you must go back, you must suffer some more. Because think about natural law. We always have free will. So,
Yeah, that is something that Dr. Michael Newton says as well. We have free will. He claims that we don't have to reincarnate, that we sometimes are persuaded by our own, I don't know, higher self or whatever, but that we don't have to if we don't want to. But quite often we want to because we want to fix something or want to learn something else or whatever. So that's his take on it. And I don't know what I believe right now, but
But I don't want people to quit doing their past life regressions and their LBLs or life between life regressions because they're helpful, hopeful, and healing and therapeutic. I had 2 therapists that would refer me people for phobias to do past life regression. And we signed all the paperwork and everything for client confidentiality and shared information. And every single time we found the phobia and we could heal it, but then they got to follow up with a therapist that could help them. And we would find an experience that created the fear of the flying or the fear of drowning or the fear of high places, heights. We always found it. And so there's an element of their soul that was very real. There was an element of their soul that one woman was just on her honeymoon in this hypnosis. She's part of a young couple. She's on her honeymoon and they're laughing and teasing and kind of tickling each other on a hike. And she falls right off the mountain and dies. And there's her fear of heights. And so I'm like, that's an emanation of this person's soul. That experience is something they're tapped into. And by having this experience, somehow they grow. I don't know that they were really born into that life and lived that whole, I don't really know, but I really, I feel comforted. And that's another thing. We choose to study more along the lines of what comforts us and what resonates with us. And this is our discernment. And for me, discerning that, like you said, like Michael Newton said, we're not forced to come back, but there are many proponents of reincarnation who says that we just automatically come back and have to redo. Many, many people say you just recycle back. It's somewhere in all of this.
There is the truth somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. And when we get to the other side, we can have a cup of tea.
Yes, please, and find out. Okay. Do you believe that there are negative entities as well in the spiritual world?
Of course.
Yeah. So how do they have to be? Do they influence people? Do they have to be a match for people to influence them? How do we protect ourselves, maybe?
I believe in spiritual dust bunnies, little collection. That's what I call them, the spiritual dust bunnies, little collection of energy that is not light-filled. And that human beings create them. And human beings feed them. And so, in short, and indirectly, we are protecting ourselves from the energies of other human beings. And for me, that's a daily practice, a daily grounding and centering. I have something I call the daily peace. It's a 5-minute centering, grounding, protection prayer every morning that I use. I do a little self-Reiki every morning. When I wake up, I also say, thank you, I have another day. Where was I last night? What do I need to remember? And I have this little, I can do it in about 5-7 minutes. And I'm good for the day. I don't run around crossing myself or throwing holy water or saying prayers all day long, although you can because it's good for you. Right. So I do that, but we're creators. We're creators here. People say co-create, whatever word you want to use. Any negativity, we're part of it. We made it. We created it. We exacerbated it. We can deal with it.
Sometimes I heard somewhere that substance abuse in particular invites these kind of entities in, like if you are a drug addict or something like this, or an alcoholic, that you are more prone, but I'm not sure if that's true, that you're more prone to attracting these kind of negative energies. I don't know.
I actually think the most dangerous thing that you can do is to harm others and harm yourself, whatever that looks like. But having an agenda of hurting others for some kind of gain creates big rips and tears and holes in your energy field. where those dust bunnies can get in and grow and attract even more lack of light. So that's true, but addiction work is some of the holiest of works and experiences that we can come here. I think this might be really on the nose, that I've heard some teachers say that only the highly evolved souls come here for the addiction
Oh,
experience.
really?
And
Oh,
I'm
wow.
thinking it kind of makes
Oh,
sense to me
okay.
because it's so hard. It's so challenging.
God,
I
yeah.
mean, have you
But
ever talked to
that,
somebody just trying to quit cigarettes?
yeah. But
You
that
know?
sheds a totally different light on these people. That's an amazing thought to think of them
Hmm.
as the more highly
Yeah.
evolved people. Wow.
Yeah. Because
No.
who else would take this on?
Yeah,
It's so
true.
hard.
Yeah, it is it is.
So much growth and wisdom can come
Yeah. Wow.
from dealing with it.
Mhm.
So it's so interesting. Your questions are amazing, by the way.
Thank you. I've got many more, but I'm mindful of your time, so I have a couple
Right.
of questions left. So, if you think of your legacy, like when you pass away, how would you want to be remembered? What is your, I don't know, your vision for yourself?
Wow. Okay. I have thought about it,
Okay.
and I've thought about it a lot. And what I think is that I want to be a footnote in history
A footnote.
and in the afterlife community. Like, it's a small community, but I want to be a footnote in that history
Okay.
that let everybody feel that they have the power, that
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to, and I keep saying outsource your spirituality, that
Mm-hmm.
everyone who wants it can make their own direct connection to their guides, their loved ones in spirit, to interdimensional, positive, beneficial beings, and that I empowered people, that I didn't collect people, that I wasn't like, um, I don't tell people, "You must study with me, you must do
Yeah.
this with
You don't
me."
make them dependent, right?
No, I didn't make them that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't make them dependent, that I made them empowered, that I
Mm,
made them brave, and
I
then they
love
took
it.
a chance because of me.
Okay. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last question is, so if you had only 6 more months to live versus 600, what would change? So what would you do if you only had 6 months? What would you do if you had 600 years to live? What would change for you?
600. Okay, 6 months, I do exactly what I'm doing.
Okay. Okay.
I would do exactly what I'm
No
doing. I would
question.
focus more on teaching than
Mm-hmm.
readings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To reach more people. I would keep traveling to the places that I love. I'm doing it.
Okay.
I'm raising this little puppy that people have
In the
potentially
back.
seen in the
Yes, in the
background, and
background. Yeah.
teaching him, and he's teaching me to trust that I can feed myself and take care of
Mm-hmm.
myself and feed and
Mm-hmm.
take care of him and take him on adventures. So I wouldn't change anything, which is, it's a great feeling to have. Even a year ago, I wasn't quite there, but I'm there
Okay.
now.
Yeah, then
And so if I had 600 years, I would still be growing a community.
okay.
And I've done communities that I grow, and I would be mentoring the leaders of that community,
Mhm.
teaching everyone to create a society,
Mhm.
a para society, meaning beside the regular society. We would grow our own food.
Oh,
We
great.
would get rid of money. We would
Mhm.
trade
Mhm.
goods.
Mhm.
We would prioritize creativity. We would teach our children that creativity was the
Mm.
greatest thing that we could do for the earth.
Mhm.
And we would go back to the ways of the indigenous tribes. I
Yeah,
would love
yeah,
to do that. I'd love to
yeah.
see us recycle back to that.
Oh, yeah. I think that was the better, I don't know, the better ways to live. So not just indigenous people in the Americas, but also indigenous
Mhm.
peoples here in Europe, doesn't matter. Australia, yeah, they all have
Anywhere,
taken away
anywhere,
anywhere really, yes. Yes,
anywhere.
sorry, I agree.
The land, the animals, none of it's
Exactly.
wasted. I
Yeah,
mean, if
exactly.
600 years, you could do that. You could do that in 60 or
And
maybe
60.
And
Okay.
the way the world is going, maybe even sooner, because more people are getting motivated to bring their creativity to bear. We're not all going to let our brains rot with AI slop.
Mm.
You
Yeah, I
know?
see. No, no.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
we're going to be. Listen, there's such a high frequency on this earth. It's easy to think that low frequency is winning, low frequency is taking over.
Mhm.
It never wins. It
Never mind.
never, ever,
Just
ever
certain of
wins.
this, yes, because it looks so dark right now in so many places. So
No,
that I think, okay, so the light wins. Yeah, the light shines
it's
through.
just making us do better, be
Okay.
better, and be
Okay.
more loving, and that's the focus.
That reminds me of one last thing, if I may. Do you believe in human intelligence?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, and this is where I can lose some people. It's like, I just got my head around my loved one still lives somewhere, and we
Mhm.
make contact, and you wanna talk about non-human intelligence or, NHI, as they call it, or NHIB, and that is actually NHI is the language that our US government is using now for
Okay.
non-human intelligence. Yeah, they're there. They're there. They've existed before us.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll coexist and communicate more frequently. And that's where I like that 600 years thing a little bit. Even though
Okay.
I'm not against going home anytime that God
Mhm.
wants to bring me, but
Mhm.
to have 600 more years, that gets us into our evolution with our interplanetary brothers and sisters that are out
Okay.
there.
So, and you consider them to be positive, yeah, by the sounds of it. So, and that,
Um, I think
yes.
that they're a mixed group, just like,
Okay.
we're not all perfect
Yeah.
here. I mean, because of free will.
Mhm.
Again, as above, so below, and
Mhm.
in the other dimensions, we always have free will. So there's not a homogenous race of beings that are looking at us lovingly 24/7. They're probably looking at us like, oh boy, if you're gonna go there, lock your doors and pay attention because those humans are dangerous. And I'm
Yeah.
kidding, but that
No,
there's a
but we
point.
are in a
Point.
way sometimes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
bring them through sometimes in non-intelligence, non-human intelligence?
I
You
can, I
you can.
can,
Okay.
but I don't see it as my, calling to
Okay.
do the channeling. However, I'm gonna tell you something now. I do think that in the next 3 or 4 decades, the evidential mediumship is gonna just die down because
Mhm.
people get their own messages and do it themselves, and I
Okay.
think what replaces it is the channeling, and
Okay.
that's people, that's interdimensional beings that, we have relationships with. I
Mhm.
think we're gonna, and I've even talked to colleagues that have said,
Mhm.
"Yeah, I feel more like channeling than doing
Mhm.
readings,"
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so I think that that's coming.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. This has been an amazing
Yeah,
conversation.
it's a great
Thank you
conversation. I
so much
appreciate you.
for being here, and it has been so, I don't know, so honest, so open, so high frequency, so lovely. So thank you so much for being on my podcast. And
Listen, thanks for introducing me to your audience 'cause, I am I was just in, Basel,
yeah.
last November at the Flow
Oh,
conference, and I'm
yeah.
in Europe a lot.
Oh,
I
you
have a
are.
very soft spot for Spain.
Hey.
I'm in Spain twice a year,
Oh,
and,
great. Okay.
I love meeting my, European brothers and sisters,
Oh,
so
perfect.
thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, und jetzt folgt die deutsche Zusammenfassung meines Gespräches mit Susanne Wilson, die sich ja selbst auch der Carefree Medium nennt. Es ging also um ihren Weg als Medium, um Nahtoderfahrung, um Jenseitskontakte, um Reinkarnation, um den Umgang mit Trauer und auch um Fragen von negativen Energien, nichtmenschliche Intelligenz und spiritueller Eigenverantwortung. Suzanne hatte zunächst erzählt, dass sie schon als Kind hellsichtig und hellsichtige und hellhörige Erfahrungen hatte. Sie nahm Dinge wahr, die andere nicht wahrnahmen, wurde damit aber in der Schule gemobbt und lernte früh, darüber lieber zu schweigen. Eine wichtige Rolle spielte dabei ihr Großvater, ein protestantischer Prediger, der ihr sagte, dass er auch solche Wahrnehmungen kenne. Und er wurde für sie zu einer Art Mentor und vermittelte ihr zugleich, vorsichtig mit diesen Fähigkeiten umzugehen. Lange Zeit lebte Susanne dann ein ganz anderes Leben. Sie machte akademische Abschlüsse, arbeitete in verantwortungsvollen Positionen, unter anderem als Universitätsadministratorin und im Personalbereich eines großen Unternehmens. Spirituelle Themen hielt sie eher verborgen und der entscheidende Wendepunkt kam erst später durch eine Nahtoderfahrung. Diese Nahtoderfahrung hatte sie bei einem Allergietest in einer Arztpraxis. Sie erlitt eine schwere anaphylaktische Reaktion, konnte nicht mehr atmen und schildert, dass sie in dem Moment, als Herzschlag und Atmung aussetzten, ihren Körper verließ. Sie nahm die Szene von oben wahr, sah die Ärzte und das medizinische Personal wie in Zeitlupe und zugleich eine andere und für sie viel realere Wirklichkeit, also Farben, Musik und die Präsenz ihres verstorbenen Großvaters. Sie hatte das Gefühl, dass das, was wir normalerweise für Realität halten, im Vergleich dazu fast flach und unwirklich erschien. Und in diesem Zustand hörte sie nun diese Botschaft: Deine Arbeit hat noch nicht begonnen. Gerade diese Botschaft brachte in ihr viel in Bewegung. Einerseits war sie tief berührt, andererseits auch irritiert und sogar wütend, weil sie ja durchaus bereits hart arbeitete, beruflich und akademisch. Und erst allmählich verstand sie, dass damit nicht ihre bisherige Karriere gemeint war, sondern eine andere Form von Aufgabe. Nach diesem Erlebnis seien ihre spirituellen Fähigkeiten noch deutlich stärker geworden. Sie sagt, sie habe danach nicht mehr lernen müssen, wie man sich einstimmt, sondern eher, wie man sich wieder ausstimmt. Also, oder wie man das Ganze abschaltet im Prinzip, weil sie plötzlich sehr offen für sehr viele Eindrücke gewesen war. Sie beschreibt ihre medialen Fähigkeiten als eine Kombination sogenannter Clairs, das ist C-L-A-E-R-S, und das bezeichnet Dinge wie Hellsehen, Hellhören, Hellwissen und Hellfühlen. Und besonders stark seien bei ihr schon immer das Sehen und das Hören gewesen. Dabei macht sie aber eine wichtige Unterscheidung. Sie sieht nicht unbedingt ständig objektiv mit den physischen Augen Gestalten im Raum, sondern eher subjektiv, also im inneren Bild, im geistigen Auge, fast so wie kurze innere Sequenzen oder ein plötzliches Wissen. Und genau das sei für viele Menschen wichtig zu verstehen, weil mediale Wahrnehmung eben oft viel subtiler sei, als man es sich vorstellt. Interessant war auch, dass sie sehr offen darüber sprach, dass sie nach ihrer Nahtoderfahrung zunächst Schwierigkeiten hatte, mit dieser Offenheit umzugehen und zeitweise Alkohol nutzte, um sich eher abzuschirmen. Sie empfiehlt das ausdrücklich nicht, weder zum Öffnen noch zum Abschalten, aber sie benennt ehrlich, dass diese Phase Teil ihres Weges war. Auf meine Frage hin, wie der Übergang vom alten Berufsleben in die mediale Arbeit konkret verlief, erzählte Susanne, dass dieser Wandel keineswegs immer glatt oder glamourös war. Sie beschreibt eher, dass sie im alten Beruf innerlich immer weniger funktionierte, ihre Leistung sank und sie eigentlich schon spürte, dass sie dort nicht mehr richtig war. Schließlich stieg sie aus, verkaufte mit ihrem Mann oder Partner ihr bisheriges Leben in Florida, zog nach Arizona und baute sich dort Schritt für Schritt eine neue Existenz auf. Sie betont, dass nicht jeder einfach alles hinschmeißen könne und dass spirituelle Berufung auch mitten im bestehenden Leben gelebt werden könne. Ihr Rat lautet sinngemäß: Leuchte dort, wo du gerade bist. Man müsse also nicht zwingend den Job kündigen, um anderen auf spirituelle Weise zu dienen. Ein sehr wichtiger Teil des Gesprächs war die Frage, was Mediumship eigentlich ist und was nicht. Susanne sagt, ein großes Missverständnis bestehe darin, dass Menschen glaubten, ein Medium könne einfach beliebig jede verstorbene Person quasi bestellen, so als würde man etwas auf einer Speisekarte auswählen. So funktioniere Jenseitskontakt ihrer Erfahrung nach nicht, vielmehr gehe es um Symbole, Eindrücke, innere Bilder und eine Art Übersetzungsprozess. Spirit kommuniziere dann eben nicht immer linear oder direkt, sondern oft über Zeichen, Erinnerungsbilder oder Assoziationen, die sie als Medium dann deuten müsse. Sie sprach auch darüber, dass echte mediale Arbeit sehr viel Energie, Übung und Verantwortung erfordert. Und besonders wichtig war ihr dabei die Unterscheidung zwischen einer hilfreichen, heilsamen spirituellen Arbeit und einer Art Konsumhaltung, in der Menschen immer neue Readings suchen, ohne wirklich selbst innerlich zu wachsen. Susanne erzählte, dass sie keine Einzelreadings mehr für jedermann anbietet. Eine Ausnahme macht sie für Eltern, die ein Kind verloren haben und sich keine Sitzung leisten können. Für diese Menschen liest sie weiterhin kostenlos, weil sie darin einen tieferen Sinn sieht. Gleichzeitig grenzt sie sich aber klar von einer Haltung ab, bei der Menschen von Readings abhängig werden. Und in diesem Zusammenhang sprachen wir auch über Trauer und Verletzlichkeit. Susanne sagt sehr deutlich, ein Reading heilt nicht einfach alles. Es kann ein wichtiger Baustein sein, aber es ersetzt weder Trauerarbeit noch Therapie noch andere Formen der Verarbeitung. Und gerade Menschen in ganz akuter, schwerer Trauer nimmt sie nicht sofort in ihre Praxis auf. Und wenn jemand bereits psychologisch oder psychiatrisch begleitet wird, dann möchte sie, dass diese Begleitung Vorrang hat. Ihr Grundsatz ist ganz, ganz klar: Do no harm, also keinen Schaden anrichten. Sehr berührend waren einige Beispiele, die sie aus ihrer Arbeit erzählte, etwa von einem Mann, der in Pflegefamilien aufgewachsen war und von einem bestimmten Pflegeelternpaar so viel Liebe erfahren hatte, dass es sein Leben veränderte. Susanne konnte Namen und Details nennen, an die eigentlich niemand herankam. Oder von Eltern, deren verstorbener Sohn im Reading auf einen ganz bestimmten Streich mit einer zugenagelten Tür verwies, etwas, das nur die Familie wissen konnte. Und solche Momente seien für sie der eigentliche Kern ihrer Arbeit. Nicht Ruhm, nicht Außendarstellung, sondern Augenblicke, in denen Menschen etwas erfahren, das sie tief berührt und für sie wirklich Bedeutung hat. Wir haben auch über Skepsis, Kritik und den Vorwurf des Cold Reading gesprochen. Susanne differenziert hier stark zwischen offenen Skeptikern und zynischen Kritikern. Skeptische Fragen findet sie legitim, sogar wichtig. Zynismus dagegen bringt aus ihrer Sicht niemanden weiter, und ich teile das sehr. Zu dem Vorwurf des Cold Readings sagte sie, man solle gerade darauf achten, ob ein Medium möglichst wenig Informationen vom Gegenüber braucht. Sie selbst bevorzugt in echten Mediumship-Sitzungen ein Format, in dem die Person, also der Sitter, möglichst wenig sagt, damit die Informationen nicht aus Rückmeldungen zusammengesetzt werden. Sie erzählt auch, dass sie bei Online-Sitzungen die Kamera der anderen Person oft bewusst ausschaltet, um keine Mimik oder Körpersprache zu lesen und sich wirklich nur auf die mediale Wahrnehmung zu konzentrieren. Ein weiterer spannender Punkt war die Frage, wie man zwischen echter Wahrnehmung und eigener Interpretation oder Projektion unterscheidet. Susanne sagt, gute evidenzbasierte Medialität sei möglichst beschreibend und nicht vorschnell interpretierend. Ihr Beispiel war ein roter Apfel. Für sie könne ein roter Apfel oft symbolisch für eine Lehrperson stehen, aber statt sofort zu behaupten, jemand sei ein Lehrer gewesen, sei es sauberer, zunächst nur zu sagen, ich sehe einen roten Apfel. Erst dann könne gemeinsam erkundet werden, was dieses Bild tatsächlich bedeutet. Und vielleicht gehe es um einen Lehrer, vielleicht aber auch um einen Apfelbaum im Garten und familiäre Erinnerungen dazu oder daran. Und genau diese Zurückhaltung hält sie für wichtig. Sehr interessant war für mich auch der Teil über Reinkarnation. Susanne glaubt, dass es so etwas wie ein Vorleben oder seelische Erfahrung jenseits dieses aktuellen Lebens gibt, aber sie versteht das nicht unbedingt im klassischen Sinne von, eine Seele geht immer wieder komplett durch neue Geburten und in neue Leben hinein. Das heißt, sie orientiert sich eher an einer Art Oversoul oder Emanationsmodell. Das heißt, für sie ist eher vorstellbar, dass eine größere Seele verschiedene Ausdrucksformen oder Aspekte hat. Also eine größere Seele, verschiedene Ausdrucksformen, verschiedene Aspekte dieser einen Seele. Und die unterschiedlichen Erfahrungen macht sie gleichzeitig oder auch in parallelen Leben oder in verschiedenen Dimensionen. Und sie ist offen dafür, dass manches, was in Rückführungen erlebt wird, real und bedeutsam ist, aber sie ist sich eben nicht sicher, ob man das immer so verstehen muss, als hätte dieselbe Seele quasi linear hunderte vollständige Menschenleben nacheinander gelebt. Auch das ist ein spannender Aspekt, und wenn du Nachttanz kennst, dann würde ich dich bitten, nochmal in das Kapitel 6 zu gucken und auch dazu, was Saylor zu diesem Punkt erzählt und auch die Analogie mit dem Eimer, dass alle Leben möglicherweise gleichzeitig stattfinden könnten. Genau. Wichtig ist Susanne vor allem die Frage, ist es hilfreich, hoffnungsvoll und heilsam? Ja, also das ist die Frage, die sie sich stellt bei allem, was sie macht. Wenn ja, dann hält sie auch Rückführung oder eben Michael Newtons Life Between Lives, Arbeit für sinnvoll. Sie selbst ist als Hypnotherapeutin und Rückführungsbegleiterin ausgebildet und hat erlebt, genau, das ist ein Klassiker, dass sich bestimmte Phobien durch solche Ängste oder durch solche Arbeit viel mehr tatsächlich lösen können. Etwa Höhenangst, Flugangst oder andere tiefe Ängste, die mit inneren Bildern aus anderen Ebenen oder anderen Seelenerfahrungen zusammenzuhängen schienen. Ja, es ist ja auch das, was das Thema bei Nachttanz ist. Und in meinem Gespräch mit Dr. Dorothea Fugert in einer meiner vorangegangenen Podcast-Folgen. Im weiteren Gespräch kamen wir auf negative Wesenheiten oder dunkle Energien zu sprechen, und Susanne verwendet dafür eine eher ungewöhnliche, aber einprägsame Formulierung. Sie nennt sie Spiritual Dust Bunnies, also spirituelle Staubflusen oder Staubknäuel. Damit meint sie Ansammlung von Energie, die nicht lichtvoll sind und die nach ihrer Sicht auch stark von Menschen mitgeschaffen und genährt werden. Und der beste Schutz dagegen sei keine Angstspirale, sondern eine tägliche Praxis von Erdung, Zentrierung, Dankbarkeit und innerer Ausrichtung. Sie selbst arbeitet jeden Morgen mit einer kurzen Routine aus Gebet, Schutz, Zentrierung und einer Art energetischen Selbstfürsorge. Besonders bemerkenswert fand ich auch ihre Sicht auf Sucht, auf meine Frage hin, ob etwa Alkohol- oder Drogenmissbrauch Menschen anfälliger für negative Energien machen könne, sagte sie, das Gefährlichste sei generell, sich selbst oder anderen zu schaden. Gleichzeitig sprach sie mit viel Mitgefühl über Suchterkrankung und erwähnte eine spirituelle Perspektive, nach der gerade Menschen, die mit Sucht kämpfen, möglicherweise sehr weit entwickelte Seelen sein könnten, weil diese Erfahrungen so extrem herausfordernd sind. Das ist natürlich eine spezielle Sichtweise, aber eine, die viel Mitgefühl statt Verurteilung in sich trägt und die mir auch gut gefallen hat. Gegen Ende sprachen wir noch über ihr Vermächtnis. Susanne sagte, sie wolle später am liebsten als eine Art Fußnote in der Geschichte der Jenseitsforschung in Erinnerung bleiben, nicht als jemand, der Menschen an sich bindet, sondern als jemand, der ihnen Mut macht, ihre eigene Verbindung zur geistigen Welt zu entdecken. Und sie möchte Menschen nicht sammeln, nicht abhängig machen, sondern stärken. Auf die Frage, was sie tun würde, wenn sie nur noch 6 Monate zu leben hätte, sagte sie, dass sie im Grunde genau das tun würde, was sie jetzt schon tut. Lehren, reisen, mit ihrem Hund leben, Menschen begleiten. Das fand ich sehr berührend, weil es zeigt, dass sie ihr Leben offenbar inzwischen als stimmig empfindet. Und auf die hypothetische Frage, was sie mit 600 Jahren Lebenszeit anfangen würde, entwarf sie eine fast utopische Vision. Gemeinschaften aufbauen, Menschen zusammenbringen, Kreativität fördern, Nahrung gemeinsam anbauen, Geld unwichtiger machen und in gewisser Weise zu gemeinschaftlicheren, naturverbundeneren Lebensformen zurückzufinden, auch inspiriert von indigenen Lebensweisen. Ganz am Ende kamen wir noch auf nichtmenschliche Intelligenz zu sprechen. Susanne sagte klar, dass sie an die Existenz solcher Intelligenzen glaubt. Sie geht davon aus, dass es neben uns weitere bewusste Wesen oder Ebenen von Bewusstsein gibt und dass dieses Thema in Zukunft immer relevanter werden könnte. Gleichzeitig betont sie, dass auch dort nicht einfach alles nur lichtvoll oder nur negativ sei, sondern dass, wie bei uns Menschen, Unterschiede und freie Entscheidung eine Rolle spielen. Sie vermutet sogar, dass sich spirituelle Arbeit in den kommenden Jahrzehnten verändern könnte, weg von klassischer evidenzbasierter Medialität hin zu mehr Channeling und interdimensionalen Kontakten. Insgesamt war das Gespräch mit Susanne Wilson für mich sehr offen, ehrlich und sehr facettenreich. Es ging nicht nur um Jenseitskontakte im engeren Sinn, sondern um die größere Frage, wie wir mit Spiritualität verantwortungsvoll umgehen, wie wir Trauer nicht instrumentalisieren, wie wir uns nicht abhängig machen von äußeren Autoritäten und wie wichtig es ist, die eigene innere Verbindung ernst zu nehmen. Ein zentraler Gedanke, der sich durch das ganze Gespräch zog, war für mich dieser: Spirituelle Erfahrung soll nicht kleiner, abhängiger oder ängstlicher machen, sondern freier, mutiger und eigenverantwortlicher. Das war Nachttanz mit Cory, Gespräche zwischen Seele, Schatten und Menschsein. Wenn dir diese Folge gefallen hat, freue ich mich riesig, wenn du sie likest, bewertest und vor allem weiterempfehlst. So wächst dieser kleine Indie-Podcast, den ich liebevoll meine Seifenkiste nenne. Warum Seifenkiste? Weil ich hier ganz ohne Studio, ohne Verlag, ohne Marketingteam einfach auf meine kleine Kiste steige und das teile, was mir wirklich wichtig ist. Und vielleicht erreicht es ja genau die Menschen, für die es gedacht ist. Mehr zu mir und meiner Arbeit findest du auf nachtanz.net. Ich danke dir von Herzen fürs Zuhören und freue mich, wenn du bei der nächsten Folge wieder dabei bist.